Yo, what is going on, chat? Happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great end of the week. I'm Isiah, Killgoon with me as usual, and we've got Rowe from the design team joining us for our Friday edition of Titan Talk. We are planning a pretty big balance pass for SMITE 2 coming up here in the next couple of days. We don't have a hard ETA on when all this balance is coming out, but we figured we wanted to get out in front of the community, go over all the changes, get your feedback, and just let you all what we've got cooking in the pipeline to head to SMITE 2 balance-wise, just because we've gotten a lot of feedback post-OB2.
That's right, yeah. I mean, the pace we're working at, it could come at any time. We're doing this as soon as last night and this morning, so as soon as it's all implemented, all working, all tested, and ready to go out, it'll go out.
Yeah, it's exactly. Well, I'm super excited to get into it. So without further ado, I'm not going to hold anything up. Let's go ahead and get into it because we got a lot to talk about today. I'm going to bring up the handy dandy laptop, and chat, you may have noticed, we figured out how to do dark mode, so we're not flashbanging you here on Titan Talk anymore.
Nice,
so shout outs to production for hooking me up with the right Google Doc settings to make sure that we've got dark mode going on for all of our stuff. But we'll go ahead and kick things off with probably one of the biggest things the community has been talking about over the past couple of days. Ro, do you want to give us a preface before we get into the changes?
No, I just want to own up to my own mistakes. I was the one that made this item, and yeah, I based it on some SMITE 1 numbers. Should have looked at the SMITE 2 numbers a little closer. So it was a big gap between this starter and the other starters. It was also made pretty quickly. We like to ship fast.
Yeah.
But I'm glad everybody's enjoyed it. It's made a lot more viable crit play styles, and it's really hit the mark. Speaking of mark, we apply some balance changes to it. So a pretty decent shift overall. I would say it is a nerf, but it'll also just kind of a shift in identity. It'll stay crit, but we want to angle it a little bit towards attack speed and try to balance the gold gains. That's the plan here.
Yeah.
So we're going to decrease the attack power again down to 15. Adding 10% attack speed, but we're taking away 10% from the passive. So it just feels, sometimes you'd really feel the passive, but otherwise it just felt bad if you didn't get the passive. So now you have it all the time, and you just get more from the mark itself. And then the gold gains reduced a little bit. 4 to 3 doesn't sound like much. It is a 25% nerf when you put it that way. And increasing the cooldown as well, which means you'll get less procs of that. But we can move on to sharpshooter as well. That's the upgrade. Again, the power reduced, increasing the attack speed just a little bit just to make it more powerful because you are investing that extra gold in it and you can't get it until level 20. An important thing is now it only applies the increased basic attack damage when hitting gods. We were seeing fire giants and things like that die pretty quickly. You always get that increased range because you can stand wherever you want against the fire giant. And then we're reducing that damage down to 10%. We saw some crazy clips, most of them Jingwei, most of them with 4 to 5 power potions. So we can kind of throw those out a little bit. They're always going to be crazy. Which the gold helped to get there, so we're nerfing that too.
It shows how easy it is to lie with short form video.
Right.
It's like, this is happening all game. Clips, it's like, and then you look and it's like, this person is 40-0 in a
52-minute
60-minute game.
So we are tuning it down a bit just because it was a bit too strong. Later in this patch as well, I guess you can see it on the screen already, but we are bringing them up as well.
Are hiding it, actually.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? Let me toggle the cams. Spoilers. Here we go.
Yeah, so we're just kind of bringing the hunter starter items, sorry, not hunter, ranged attack carry starter items together in power because we ran the numbers for balance on the current all starters right now. And it was apparent that Leather Cowl, Hunter's Cowl, Death's Embrace, and Death's Toll were actually at the bottom of all starters, not just range starters. So we wanted to bring those up, bring Sharpshooter down. It's almost inevitable that we feel like we might have to do some more balance to Boomba's Dagger as well, because we see that creeping into that lane. But all of these changes together should hopefully bring the range starters together just so that they feel like you have a choice rather than one is just the best.
Multiple viable options depending on what playstyle you want to go into.
And that's always difficult with hunters as well. In SMITE 1, we had that problem forever where it's like, whatever the highest damage build is, I'm buying that no matter what, right?
It's a numbers game, right?
Right. If there's a highest damage build and it's good on a specific god, I'm playing that god, building that, So it was always difficult. We want to try to bring that together. We want to bring in more varying playstyles. Gold gains on the sharpshooter as well came down. So only applying to kills and assists. That's kind of vague because a lot of things are assists, like like technically you're assisting the Gold Fury and things like that when you're around it. But in general, there were Aladdin's. Not that you would buy this on Aladdin, but Aladdin's Wish, for example. There are a lot of different gold gains, so we're just specifying kills and assists only.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about Leather Cow and Hunter's Cow, but getting a buff there, removing the attack speed for Leather Cow, adding lifesteal, and increasing the passive attack speed buff for Leather Cow. And then the upgrade Hunter's Cow, increasing the strength, removing the attack speed, and adding lifesteal like with the base, but also increasing that attack speed aura and adding a 10% lifesteal aura.
Correct, yeah. So Leather Cow already pretty good on its own, but lifesteal on top of that. Sharpshooter Gilded had lifesteal for a little while there, and people felt that was really strong. So it moved that onto Leather Cow essentially in the aura as well for Hunter's Cow. So really great for your team if you're playing around big team fights.
Cool. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I build Cowl almost every game of Assault when I get a Hunter.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And it feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good to be there.
Great for your team, yeah.
All right, we are moving right along. Another topic of discussion. Let's talk about mid-lane intelligence-focused items, Rowe.
Yes.
Before we get into all the changes, let's do a little bit of a preface on what we're seeing and kind of what our approach is.
If we think back to Vegas, there was pretty much one prominent build. It was like Conduit into Soul Gem into Gem of Focus, and we did a little bit to address that in the start of OB2. By bringing that build down. But the quick response from a lot of mid lane players was that there wasn't a great alternative build to go for. We tried to buff some niche items. They didn't really land, unfortunately. We'll try again. We always want to make every item viable somewhere. But in general, we felt we had to bring up mage power or intellect power just quite a bit on starter items.
Cool. So Conduit Gem and Sands of Time are both getting intelligence buffs, and then Soul Reaver is getting a decrease in cost, and then Spear of Desolation, we are adjusting the recipe, but we're going to be adding 10 cooldown rate, and then last but not least, Staff of Mirrodin, we're going to be decreasing that active cooldown.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I really like Mirrodin, all the interactions we get. I hope we see more of it because it's fun.
It's just a fun item,
exactly,
right? Yeah. So hopefully we should see some more mid-lane intelligence-focused item builds pop up after these changes. If not, we're going to continue to keep an eye on it and make changes, right? Kind of the next grouping of changes when it comes to items are kind of like our tank items, Rowe. As our resident solo laner here, talk to me about what's going on.
Here's my bias, we just have some underbought tank items. When we're looking at the data, we can see basically the count of how many players have bought these items, and we looked at their power potential. We have math in place to measure cost versus power, and some of these items needed to be adjusted in that regard. So Glorious Pridwin, an item from SMITE 1, but now an active item, so you just press it whenever you want that shield, up in protections, and the damage and the shield that you get up in from 80% to 100% of your protections. So like kind of a double buff there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Mystical Mail is going to be getting a decrease in cost, just underbought. So.
Again, underbought. And also, I felt like its cost was out of place for where that item is really useful. You want it in lane when you're around the minions and things like that. 2650 kind of took it away from that lane phase a bit. So bringing it down in cost without changing any of the stats, just a strict buff, should hopefully bring it into a lane phase a little more.
Cool. All right, next up, let's talk about the Void items. Void Stone and Void Shield, both getting buffs. Before I get into it, Rowe, you want to call out anything?
Well, I'll call out that I think these are pretty strong buffs, but it's kind of on purpose. Sometimes we'll do balance shifts to just force a shift in a meta, right? If an item isn't being bought and therefore just the tank items, or let's say just Gladiator Shield is being bought, then it gets kind of stale. The gods that are just good with Gladiator Shield get played a lot. Yeah. Whereas there'll be gods that are good with Void Stone, Void Shield that just won't get a lot of play because those items aren't good. So we're making them quite good. These are some big buffs.
Cool. And then last up, Shield Splitter, one of my favorite new items to Smite 2, just because I love the theming on it. Yeah. Just getting a strict cost decrease buff.
Yeah, I think this one was already sleeper good. I liked it's got a really short cooldown. It just does damage. You don't need to buy it against shields. Obviously, it's especially good if you're against a shield god. But 2450 for a little bit of strength, your prots, it's a great first item in lane.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that wraps it up for items. We are going to move on to gods next. And first up, yes, Aladdin is on the docket. He's going to be getting a round of nerfs here. I've seen people in chat asking about it already. We've heard your wishes. We've heard your wishes. So let's talk about Aladdin, Rogue. Big round of nerfs here.
It's everything across the board, right? And that's what we did here from the community. He was just kind of OP across the board. And this is might be the fourth round, maybe the third.
I think so. Yeah.
But so Genie's Lamp, giving a lot of quote-unquote free stacks. You know, it is taking up an item slot, but you don't have to pay for it. This may put it into the point where you're maybe more likely to sell it in the late game after you've used the wishes, and that gets more creative there as well. But just a decrease in stats, that alone will decrease his performance in general, just because, you know, a 5% less stats from your items, that's quite a big nerf alone.
And then Sultan's Grace, decreasing the punch damage, decreasing the low health bonus damage, and increasing the cooldown on that ability.
Yep, nerf all around once again.
And both the base damage and the scaling, you know, it's a lot of damage cut back.
That's right. And when you look at these, I mean, you could look at the previous Aladdin nerfs as well. It's like, wow, he's still OP after these. I remember doing this about Sylvanas in Smite 1 when his 2 used to heal minions a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you know, Zhong Kui in Smite 1 where his ult used to heal his allies as well. And then we remove a massive part of their kit and they're like, wow, they're still pretty good. I guess that explains how good they were before. So, yeah, an overall nerf to Sultan's Grace. And especially the big moment of dashing through someone while they were low health ended up being a lot of damage. So that decreased low health bonus damage is probably one of the biggest ones there.
Cool. And then Agile Run, the Wall Run, just going to be decreasing the base damage and decreasing the genie damage. The range on that has already been nerfed, so just touching this ability in a different way. And then last but not least, Into the Lamp, the ultimate, we're going to be decreasing the self-heal and then increasing the cooldown of this ability. It's so impactful.
Right, yeah, I mean, you can take a look at those cooldown numbers. We normally don't do 0.5 in cooldowns, but this one is struggle to balance. So we're really trying to find the fine point here, and I believe we will. So this is an attempt at that.
Yeah, cool. All right, chat, those are your round of Aladdin nerfs. Again, after these nerfs go live, we're going to be paying special attention to Aladdin, monitoring the data, and if we need to make more changes, we will definitely make more changes.
Yep.
Moving right along, we've got Zeus up next, seeing a shift. Let's talk about Zeus.
Yeah, so this is one of those ones where it's like, when we look at our data and we listen to our players like playing Zeus in the range carry role and having quite a lot of success, but when they play it in mid, for example, they're having much less success. So I think we're going to see this quite often going forward in our balance, where we do a shift to try to buff the god in one role and nerf it in the other, just because we have such viability in every role for a lot of different gods in Smite 2 now. It is difficult to balance, but this is an attempt at that. So overall, the vibe you'll see here is reductions in things that are most useful to Zeus in the range carry role, and increases in the mid lane role, like his clear and things like that, from his heavy int abilities.
Cool. All right, so first up, Overcharge. We're going to be decreasing the damage increase, that's hard to say, from 20% per stack to 15% per stack. Going to be decreasing the cooldown on Chain Lightning, so a little bit of a buff
for the mid
on
lane,
that ability for his clear. Thunderclap, we're going to be decreasing the attack speed buff, again kind of targeting that carry Zeus role that we saw so prominently. Shout out to Tegvir, played it really well at Vegas.
Crazy build.
I know, crazy plays. Detonate Charge, we're going to be decreasing the damage, but increasing the damage scaling, so base damage going down, scaling going up.
Better
so if you're playing a lot of intelligence,
And that is that per stack as well on Detonate?
Well, yeah, from Overcharge, exactly.
And then last but not least, Lightning Storm. We're going to be increasing the damage scaling per tick from 55% int to 65% int. So 10% scaling buff is pretty prominent.
Yeah, and again, per tick, so that ends up being quite a lot of damage if you have quite a lot of int.
What is Zeus, like 5 or 6 ticks? I forget.
Well, if you can keep them in there, yeah.
All right, next up, Medusa. Going to be seeing some nerfs. Got a round of nerfs already, but just a little bit more. Rowe, talk to me about Medusa.
Yeah, we were talking about Medusa a lot after Vegas, in comparison to gods like Jingwei and Uller.
I'll just scroll in.
And
kind of loop them in together.
So they were they were grouped together after Vegas as well, and we looked at their stats, and it was the same for normal play and ranked play. So just trying to get the appropriate nerfs on these gods without making them unplayable, and at the same time bringing up some other hunters. So Medusa Acid Spray nerf will help nerf her clear quite a bit, and then just an increase in cooldown. Make sure that you have to really be intelligent when you use it.
Use that, and then using that ultimate. And then Jingwei up next. Persistent Gust, going to be decreasing the damage per tick and increasing the cooldown. And then Explosive Bolt, increasing the cooldown and decreasing the scaling. Yeah,
so for Persistent Gust, what we wanted to hit here was, I mean, that's a big tick reduction damage. If you consider you're ranking your one up first, normally 60 per tick on a minion wave, especially the archers that kind of just sit in that Persistent Gust, ends up being a lot of clear. Jingwei's identity, at least for a long time in Smite 1, was kind of a weaker Smite early game laner, and then she'd really come online late and be really, really strong. And she was quite safe, so she could get there quite often. In Smite 2, we've seen, at least at Vegas and recent ranked data, that she's just quite good early game as well. So we wanted to bring down her clear thanks to that. And then the explosive bolts kind of addresses the viral clips we've seen of the 2,000 plus crits. So yeah.
All right, moving right along. I think we've got buffs up next. Amaterasu going to be getting a buff here. Rowe, as again, our resident solo laner, talk to us about Ama.
Another one where we're trying to buff the underplayed gods that we're seeing in our data. So just overall buffing what her strongest identity is. So her attack speed, she's a great attack speed stim warrior. So buffing her base attack speed also helps any percentage increase attack speed she gets. So it's actually kind of multiplicative in a way. And then the damage reduction, if you build a lot of int, so if you want to go that hybrid or even full int Amaterasu build, you get quite a lot of damage reduction when you pop the two. So yeah, from 0.97 to 1 base attack speed increase is obviously great at level 1, but increases all the buffs after that, including the buff that we're doing to Divine Presence, increasing that overall attack speed, and then the damage reduction will actually scale up to be quite high if you build like a Book of Thoth or something.
For sure. Yeah, I think we saw 1 or 2 Ama games at Vegas, but hopefully we'll see her a lot more after these buffs. Anhur, coming up next, carry role, Jingwei, Medusa, Ul, kind of really prominent in that lane, so we're just focusing on Anhur to kind of bring him in line with those, right? Yeah,
and speaking about Jingwei, like I said, for, weaker in the early game is intense, stronger in the late game is intense. Anhur's a bit the opposite, he wants to be a bully in the lane phase. He wants to jump on you and impale, but he's kind of just struggling to clear the wave, especially compared to a god like Jing. So again, bringing them closer together, building on their identities as early game versus late game. So bringing up the damage on impale will help them clear the wave finally, and then we really want to encourage people to aim that last hit of the ultimate as well. So increasing the final damage of the ultimate by quite a bit here, from 290 and 100% strength to 325 and 115% strength is quite a bit on that last hit. It is hard to hit, but you should be encouraged to go for it rather than like canceling the ult or just using it to run away or anything like that. And then aspect of the pride, we haven't seen we haven't seen this one get too much play yet, and we just kind of want to experiment with just like these we would have never done this in Smite 1. Ever. I can't imagine ever. I mean, we obviously didn't have the technology either, but just decreasing the max attack speed of this buff from 100% to 60%. 100% felt great, but this next point will feel even better.
Impale and Desert Fury can now crit and proc basic item effects.
Yeah. This is one where it's like, that's a fun idea. How's it going to go? I don't know.
We'll see,
That's right. So I'm excited. As soon as this one goes live, I'll be watching Twitch streamers to see what they can build.
For sure. Anhur is one of my favorite gods to watch. So I'm definitely curious to see what people cook up with the builds for this aspect if they turned it on. Cabrakan up next. Rowe, I know you ran point on Cabrakan for Smite 2. So talk to us about how we've seen Cabrakan once he kind of hit the battleground, underperforming a little bit, It's the same story from Smite 1, right, Killgoon?
Yeah, dude. We're just doomed to release Cabrakan in an undertuned state, and then everybody's like, this god's awful, and they don't play him for a year, and we just keep buffing him and buffing him and buffing him, and then they're like, oh my god, it's the best god in the game. So we're trying to kind of short circuit that a little bit and just buff him up to a good state pretty quickly.
Right.
I'll let you talk about what we're actually doing.
Yeah. I mean, I like you said, I was point on Cabrakan, and throughout. I didn't lose a playtest on Cabrakan for a long time, and
you're just too good.
People just need to get good.
Internally, people weren't very happy with me, so I was like, all right, I'll nerf him. There was at one point he had another part to another ability, so that we've cut him back quite a bit to get him into a point of balance. And then once he went live, obviously it didn't hit the way we wanted to. There's a couple bug fixes as well that will help him too, but overall. I mean, you can see it's every ability here. Yeah. We're buffing pretty much all of it. Incrementally is what we're trying to do for each ability, but all abilities at once. So damage scaling will really reward you when you're the Cabrakan jungle. That's not any base damage buffs, but the cooldown will help a lot, and that's on Seismic Crush, which is his one. Yeah. Refraction Shield will count for both of his shields.
So the enhanced version as well.
Correct. Cool. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And they each have their own cooldown, so you can use them both. So 5% in on each one of those. Enhanced scaling, we can see it's different scalings, but they are both being buffed here.
Both getting a 5% buff.
Yeah, and the normal one, you only get in scaling. The enhanced one, you get strength scaling. Yeah. So you can kind of pick your build. If you're jungle, you want to inherit just strength items or just int items. And I think this protections buff, if I remember correctly, is putting it back in line with Smite 1 numbers, because I think I remember reducing those during playtests. Tremors as well, getting just an overall buff, just small ones. And then we want to encourage people to be able to actually refire that 3 rather than just cancel it. So we're increasing the strength scaling on that one too.
I wish the refire was just like a fraction of a second faster, because I always go to fire it right as they're leaving my circle, and then they're gone, and I'm just like, I hit.
You got to just be a little bit more preemptive now.
Yeah, I'm not good at planning ahead. You know, I'm just like last minute. Oh God, I should refire. Oh no, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah, no, we also a little known fact is that one actually hits towers as well. And it is written in the description, but yeah, you can use that. He is the mountain destroyer, so you can go down and break some towers with your refire.
I did not know that. Yeah. That's cool.
So yeah, and then another buff on his 4th ability, Tectonic Shift, overall scaling buff. So regardless of the type of build you go, at least if you build damage, you will deal more damage.
Cool. All right, and then I believe last up on the list for God changes, we have Vulcan, the newest addition to the, well, not the newest addition. We had Hunt Bats. I forgot. He released early, but one of the newer additions in OB2. Vulcan's going to be getting a shift here. Rowe talked to us about Vulcan.
Yeah, he's a fun one. You know, we've talked about how gods can be in different roles, and we've got the aspects as well, which we can push them into more roles. Vulcan's got all of these different mods that can change his playstyle in multiple different ways. So I think AJ's had a fun time just being able to balance all the different mods to try to make them all viable in their own niche ways. So increasing the damage of the thermal mod, decreasing the protections of the masterwork mod. That one, we don't have many shared protections in Smite 2. And in Smite 1, we had things like Thebes and more than that. So it was quite powerful being at those numbers, so we've reduced those on the top end quite a bit. Earthshaker, just more scaling. We want to reward people if they hit the big ultimates. That's always a fun moment as Vulcan. And then Aspect of Fortification, that's the one that he shares his protections or gains protections from being near his turrets. 2 per level was a little bit much, so 1.5 is what we're going to do with. 1.5 is a little awkward because you won't always see it on your UI because it always rounds up or down, but you are always getting the 1.5. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that is all that we've got here. Sorry, Killgoon, you were going to say something?
I'll also just add in, Hoodbots came out yesterday.
Yes.
We'll get to him.
We will do something about him. Don't worry. There are certain things about him that are maybe a little OP, but you know, we will be balancing him soon. We just didn't have the balance ready to talk about today. So don't think we've forgotten about the monkey.
Less than 24 hours. We've been seeing all the feedback, but we do want to get some data in from Max as well, just to kind of make sure that we're hitting him in the right spots for sure.
Trust me, I've seen, I think, 3 threads about it internally. We've kind of got notes like this on him already. We're just not ready to publish them because they haven't been implemented and they're not ready for testing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very successful as Hoonbots yesterday.
Nice.
I'm just saying. So
Let's the player.
Yep, it's a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, that was all the balance that we've got for you all to talk through today. We don't have these published anywhere on like a website or on our Steam page yet. We're still kind of working out when these are actually going to be released. There's a chance that some of these may be released in parts kind of separated out from each other. So we want to make sure that we're posting the correct information for what is actually live. But as soon as we've got all that stuff locked down, we will indeed have patch notes live for you all, either on the Steam page or on the website and in Discord for y'all to review as well. In the meantime, you can scroll back through the VOD. I know it's not the most optimal way to look at upcoming patch notes, but we're working on it for you, and we'll get it to you as soon as we confirm when it's going to be released.
Yeah, I think it's better not to increase the confusion by posting them now, and the people think they're in the game and whatnot. I see even in chat, people are like, oh, is this out today? And it's like, we've said a couple times, you know, they'll be rolling out over the next few days, maybe even into Tuesday of next week, right? But yeah, we're excited to get some stuff out there. We know there's some balance that needs to be done. And let us know how things feel, right? Like, balance is always a work in progress. And, you know, sometimes it matters what you think more than what the actual numbers are. So it's always good
we want your feedback.
Perception versus reality. And it's a delicate balancing act. But I know the crew's got it. We've got a lot of amazing people on the design team. We've got all the Max data. It's been so cool just seeing those charts that he brings up.
It's
too.
amazing.
It's been really
It's
cool
so useful as well.
Yeah. It's awesome. Sweet. Well, that kind of wraps it up for everything that we had planned to discuss today. So we're about halfway through the show, so why not open up the floor for questions from chat? So we'll get right into it. And I'm going to bring up YouTube chat on the laptop as well. That way we can look at that.
Did we see the Reddit post about Smite 2 profiles and how it should be like? Thoughts? Yes, I saw the Reddit post that I believe was just a screenshot of the Marvel Rivals stats page. Yeah, we definitely want to make the profile page more interesting. I think I said on the last show that like we just have a lot of UI priorities right now. So it's like, do you prioritize that over doing things like God Builder and over HUD Editor and over item store improvements and wandering market, you know, things that we feel like are more important in the near term.
Yeah.
We hope to get to, a better profile eventually. And I think that like those kinds of stats are the kinds of things we would want to show there. We're actually tracking it all right now. It's really just like, we need the UI to be able to show it. And UI is always like, for a game like Smite that is so UI dependent, UI is like almost always our blocker, right? We just have so much we want to get done.
Rowe, this might be a question for you, or Kill, you may know about it as well, but from YouTube chat, are we looking into a fix for jungle camps wrapping around Vulcan turret? And sometimes when you teleport with Hunbats, the teleport to the next wave. So the Hunbats teleport issue should have been fixed this morning.
Yeah. If you're still, it would have been a slow rollout, but I would say now, if you're still experiencing it in your games from like now or at least an hour ago, definitely let us know. We had an attempted fix out. For the Vulcan one, that was kind of we had a bunch of, during development with Vulcan's turrets, we had a bunch of issues of Gold Fury and Pyromancer getting stuck on them. So we had to change a lot of the AI, or how the AI reacts to those turrets. Yeah. So it's not perfect yet. We 100% see that. I've seen a clip of the Pyromancer going out of its location back around the wall and coming around. Of course, we want to work on that, and it's best for Vulcan if we can kind of make the not just the minion waves, but the jungle monsters stay within its range. You can use your meatball a little bit to knock them back in the range for now, but we will work on it.
Cool, thank you.
I see a question about Vulcan again, and that's about his turrets not applying on-hit damage. That was a pretty late experiment we did in Smite 1 where we made all pets, so all familiars, everything, Bastet, cat, all that kind of stuff, proc items, but at a reduced efficiency or a reduced power. We don't have that reduction tech in Smite 2, so at the moment we can't do that. We could do it on a case-by-case basis, but as well, like, I'd like to hear feedback from the community. When we did that in Smite 1, it was kind of a mixed reaction. There were some things that were OP and some weak, so that kind of muddled the feedback. But I am personally not 100% sure if players really, really enjoyed that. I know there was some bad feedback about people just dying to Nuwa minions because of those procs. So there was a period where in Smite 2, Nuwa did have procs on her minions, and we had negative feedback about that, so we removed them. But again, those procs themselves weren't reduced in damage by any way. Right, so if players want that reduction back, we'll add it to the list of things that we want to do. But it was a late experiment in Smite 1, and we just don't have that technology in Smite 2 yet.
There's a question about when we're going to talk about what the upcoming gods are. So we've already revealed the upcoming gods for the next kind of wave of gods. So the next god will be Rama, then Achilles, then Artemis, then a Wheelish. I couldn't remember what the order was there, but Artemis and a Wheelish, then Princess Bari, the all-new goddess. So that's kind of the next wave, and we're targeting one a week for that rollout. After that, we haven't announced exactly who's coming when. We revealed a couple of the gods that are on the roadmap for the year, but we'll probably have another update after Bari of like, here's what the next wave kind of looks like. So you have that to look forward to.
And I believe the plan is to show off Rama and Achilles at some point next week on Titan Talk. So fingers crossed, tune in next week, and we'll be going over some new gods.
And I had one other one I wanted to answer real quick. Why 5 PS5 versus 5 PC in ranked games? Matchmaking is not based on your input, it's based on your skill. So if you play at the level of a 1500 ELO player, which we don't use ELO, but the tech, I'm just saying something that is common, but if you play at the level of 1500 skill player, then you're going to get match made with other people who are 1500 skill players, because it doesn't matter what your input is if that's the skill level that you're playing at. I will say that like we do tend to see fewer controller players in the top ends of the ELO ranges just because they are slightly held back by the input. But when you get a match that's made for you, it's not like it's an unfair matchup because of the input difference, because we aren't looking at that as part of the matchmaking. Oh, and I'm going to address one more. Can you address some people missing cross-gen skins? If you are missing a cross-gen skin that has been released in Smite 2, please try logging into Smite 1 and then logging back into Smite 2. You will almost certainly have it. If you don't have it after that, please contact support.
Let us know.
And they will get your account straightened out. There are very rarely a few accounts have gotten into a weird state, but you should have it. If there are skins that you... I didn't say your console trash, Opwash. I play on console a lot. If you're talking more about skins that just haven't been released yet in Smite 2, we are working through that backlog. We stopped all skin work whatsoever to do our God push to get to 45. So there's kind of a backlog of some of these cross-gen skins, Divine Legacy skins that we need to get out. The big kind of blocker for those, I believe, is the FX pass more than anything else, that just can't be done until the God's done in Smite 2. So we will be rolling those out over the coming months, and you will get access to all those.
Someone in YouTube chat is asking, can we get the Attack the Minions VGS call out back on console? It's currently not there.
Yeah, I think AJ was looking at this yesterday.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we just missed one that it's not on the wiki, and it's buried in I think you push LB once you're in a sub menu or something, and we just forgot that we had added it to console. So I think he was looking at that yesterday. People wanting an Attack the Pyromancer call out. So the problem is any objective that we've added since we've recorded voice packs, we don't have a line for.
Yeah.
So we just don't have a way to do that.
Yeah. For every god, every skin.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Usually what people do, if you're newish to Smite, people say attack the fire giant and they ping the pyro.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Can we be able to switch the items in consumable slots? I know we can do that to the normal item slots, but we can't do it for consumables.
So you can do
Actually
it,
can,
but it's weird. So
Okay.
on PC, you can do it by holding down Alt to get your cursor and clicking on the actual HUD, not in the item store. But if you click and drag on the actual HUD, you can swap your consumables.
Okay.
Yep.
On console, if you open the item store and then push R3 or RS on Xbox,
The right stick?
the right
Yeah.
stick click, it will swap your consumables. But there is a known bug that if one of your consumable slots is empty, it will not swap the slots.
Okay.
So that sucks and is something that is on our list to fix. But yes, you can swap your consumable slots. There's a person who's been asking about 120 frames per second mode on PS5 and Xbox. We've talked about this before. The issue that we have right now is that basically there's two threads for the game.
Yeah.
There is the game thread, which is all of the logic, all of the UI, pathing for the minions, all of that kind of stuff. And there's the graphics thread, or the render thread, which is all of the 3D graphics that are happening.
Yeah.
Our 3D render thread is more than capable of running at 120 frames per second on PS5 and Xbox. Our game thread is currently not optimized to be able to run at 120 frames per second on Xbox or PS5 because those consoles are built in such a way that they're basically like when they design the custom processors for these things, they put a lot more graphics cores on it than they put like normal processing cores. And Smite is like an abnormal game for how much game thread it needs because there's so much shit happening on the map at once, right? There are like, dozens of minions plus jungle camps plus timers plus a complex UI with hundreds of items. And, it is a very high load game thread game. So basically we would like to get to 120 frames per second mode for Xbox and PS5. But we need to continue to optimize the game thread before that can happen. So it's not something that we can just like click, snap our fingers and do that.
Wish we could.
Yeah.
I wish it was that easy.
We probably could make a mode that's like, reliably, I'm just gonna throw a number out there. There's probably not the number. It's reliably 90 frames a second or something. But most people's like TVs either have like a 120 frames mode or a 60 frames mode. And if you try and do the variable refresh rate, it usually actually screws with the graphic settings of the TV and it looks worse. So like theoretically we could do something like that, but we probably will just kind of keep going down the path of optimizing the game thread, and hopefully someday soon we will have 120 frames per second mode.
I see a report about not being able to basic attack while using meditation and assault. You should be able to now.
Yes, I believe that was fixed in the hot fix that went out, maybe Wednesday or yesterday.
Yeah.
But that one was tracked and should be fixed.
I will go back to this. Even 720p upscaled at 120 frames per second would be great. That's not the problem. So 720p would be graphics thread. So we could very easily run the game at, 300 frames a second or whatever if it was just 720p upscaled, and it was just graphics thread. But the game thread would still be holding it back and it would not be able to hit 120 frames per second like rock solid reliably.
Can player fountain spawn positions be aligned to the player's lane role?
They are meant to be. If
Maybe that's a bug.
If they aren't, it may be bugged.
Yeah, I will say
the intent is that they are.
I noticed the other day that like I was in a match that the the order on the like tab screen was also not reflecting roles the way I would have expected.
Yeah,
it
well,
to.
those are connected, so they both could be bugged together. Yeah. I'm seeing some questions about certain missing archetypes of types of builds that we saw in Smite 1.
Yeah.
And that is something we were discussing as recent as yesterday and the day before. We don't have, Anubis doesn't have his crazy Bancrofts build that he had from Smite 1 and things like that. We want to fill all the niches. We want to fill all the archetypes. We're just slowly making more items as we can. We made Gilded most recently to fill the archetype of Crit Hunter, for example, that we had from Smite 1. So you can play that now. So we'll get there. We absolutely want to do that. We don't necessarily just want to port over every Smite 1 item. We want things to be new and fresh as well. But obviously Smite 1 had a ton of great items that we would like to bring over, and some really cool looking icons that we'd just like to see in the game again as well. So yeah, we're getting there, but we are heavily focused on gods. We're making a ton of aspects as well, but we will slowly get there for items.
Yeah, I think the goal is to try and sprinkle in, we've got gods coming in, but then as we do gods, sprinkle in new aspects and new items where we see fit. Like, there won't necessarily be an aspect patch or like a new item patch, but as we get to them, we'd love to get more new stuff like that into the game.
That's right.
We're getting multiple people asking about our Alani flavor today.
Oh my gosh.
We're both on the Cosmic
Stardust today, yeah. Rowe, you got to join in, man.
I missed out, obviously.
I know, right?
I was almost late and the traffic was crazy.
There was a question about PS5 Pro and PSSR, which is like DLSS, but it's PS5 specific. So basically, I'm trying to think of the right word, and I can't remember it right now because I'm trying to answer things live. But basically, like, there is a API, a developer version of the PS5 code that your game runs on, and we're on a certain version. They recently updated that version for PS5 Pro, and that's what includes the PSSR support and all that. And we are not yet upgraded to that new version. It's a pretty big arc of work to do that. And the only thing that we would get out of it basically is enhanced support for PS5 Pro. All of our stats show that there's very few people that are playing on PS5 Pro right now. So it's just hard to prioritize that work to upgrade the why can I not think of the word? But basically the version of PlayStation services that we're running so that we could add that support.
SDK.
Yeah, SDK. Thank you so much. Why am I an idiot? Yes. So once we upgrade our SDK at some point in the future, we'll probably be required to at some point in the future once we get to it. We will probably add that. Well, I'm not going to answer if it's easier to work with Xbox or PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
Every partner has their own quirks, and everybody does business differently and has different procedures. Yeah. So it's not really like a better or worse. It's just like everybody has their quirks.
Yep.
Will Minion Ragdoll return? There is an option in settings to turn on Ragdolls.
Yes.
I don't know if that will do it for all the Minion instances you're thinking of, but there is an option in settings.
All right. I might be opening us up for this one, but I see it in YouTube chat a lot. Do we have any big features in the pipeline coming for Smite 2 that are planned or are being talked about, similar to like what we did with Aspects?
I don't know what you guys have talked about.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
We haven't really talked about too much beyond what we're doing right now. I think that the next kind of big thing is Wandering Market, right? Which is not kind of a gameplay thing.
But it's a progression thing.
Yeah. And I think that system hopefully will actually be here a lot sooner than we were initially thinking it was going to be. And we'll give people just like you play games, you earn currency,
you get cool stuff.
You get cool stuff, right? So it kind of gives you just a little bit more feeling like you're accomplishing something while you're playing. So that's kind of the next big feature that's coming. We are continuing to experiment with some gameplay stuff, but I don't know if anything's far enough along to.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a ton of experimentation.
Yeah.
We're also just developing a ton of gods. In today's playtest, the majority of the gods in today's playtest are brand new, right? Not brand new as in brand new
But not in
gods,
live
but
right now.
yeah, not in live right now. So still a big focus there. And again, like we said, aspects, items still taking up a lot of time, but there's a lot we want to get to. I think I can safely say, sorry to everybody, but Smite Card 2 is not in
we got to bring in
development
Clumsy
right now.
to combat that, you know?
maybe he's working on something in overtime or something. I don't know. I saw a bug report or a request from YouTube chat to make Cabrakan 1 crit. If the enhanced basic attack is not already critting, I will do that within 10 minutes of getting home.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I see a report about Humbat's double strength passive as well. That's the first I've heard of it, and he released yesterday. I'll take a look when I get home.
Yeah. Can Bologna's 1 autos get fixed, please? I believe that got fixed in the last hotfix that was released on Wednesday.
There's a question about any chance for general PTS access now that we are in open beta. I believe that has been added to our Steam page.
Yes.
So if you go to our Steam page, there should be text on it that says like, join the public test server or something.
Let me see if I can just.
And you can just click on it and download it now. So, but it is Steam only right now. So if you are trying to join on another platform, sorry, we'll still work on that.
Yep, I've got it here. I'm just going to bring it up for people in chat. So if you're playing on Steam, you can go to the Smite 2 Steam page, and it is right here. Want to participate in Smite 2 public test? You can click on install it, or click here to install it now. It'll be added to your library, and you can participate in all the flash tests that we've got going on.
And increase the amount of bans in ranked matches. We just increased it to 2. Where did we end up in Smite 1? I think we had 5 per team.
Yeah, 5 per team.
130 something goals.
It was the under the new system to where everyone banned at the same time.
Yeah. We will increase when it's appropriate to do so. If the feedback starts flowing in that people want more bans in ranked, we can do so. It just means it's not just 1 to 2. You have to remember that's 2 to 4, right?
Yeah.
We're taking two more gods out of the game for that match. So if we go from 4 to 6, again, that's taking 6 gods out of the game. As we increase the number of gods in the game, we'll definitely increase the number of bans.
Rowe, what's the thought process behind items doing dot or instant damage like Bluestone versus Glad Shield?
We just want to have them all their own identity, really. They're good for different reasons as well. It's like Bluestone, if it does some dots, for example, will apply a dot, but then if you hit another ability while that dot is still applied, it'll just refresh it. So you're kind of missing out on half of the first dot, whereas Glad Shield always gives you the full amount of damage instantly. So every hit is the same amount of damage. So it's to encourage different play styles. If you're a King Arthur that spams a lot of abilities, maybe you don't want to overlap your dots and reduce them. It's kind of counterintuitive, but you would want Glad Shield that procs on every ability. So it's just for different things for different gods. That's all it is.
I had a question and then I lost it because I was trying to follow another thread. Yeah, I can't find it. I'm sorry.
No worries. This is a good question because we haven't really talked about it. Any chances for new gods being auto-banned in ranked with only 4 bans and a new god every week? It's a little bit hard to keep up. I know this is something that we did in Smite 1. Whenever we released a new god, it was banned in ranked for a little bit. We haven't really been doing that in Smite 2 for ported gods, or I don't even think we did it for Aladdin when he was released. But thoughts behind that?
We want everybody to play the new gods. They can be sometimes disruptive to ranked. For a long time while we're in alpha, it's alpha. We'll bring things into line when we can. A big difference between Smite 1 and Smite 2 is that we try to patch very quickly. So if there is a disruptive god in ranked, we can patch it. If there's a major issue, we can remove the god from ranked, so it can't be played at all. But just default banning new gods, we don't currently plan to. If there is enough request for it, we can. But we hope that Smite 2 is in a better place with our shipping schedule, that we can address issues before we have to remove a god from player entirely.
There was a question about God Builder and if it's going to be just like the Smite system or if there are plans to make it different. I would say there are plans to make it different and better. The exact system is kind of in flux. We're talking about it this week a lot, actually. And we're finding that there may be some restrictions from doing the system that we initially really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So our initial goal was to do a system where basically there is, like, I can make a build, I can create my headers and title them whatever I want to. I can put items into those headers in any order. I can add notes to items saying, like, build this versus Aphrodite, or like choose between these for your second items or whatever, and like give players the ability to create like full build guides within Smite and share them with other players. And you can just look them up. I'm playing a character for the first time. I don't know what to do. You don't have to trust our auto build. You can say, what are the most upvoted builds? Cool. This one sounds neat. It's Zapman's, Hunter propaganda build, and I'm going to get that one. Cool. So that would be great. The problem that we've encountered this week is this counts as user-generated content on the platforms, and is now subject to a whole series of restrictions about how we have to treat the text, and like we have to allow you to ban someone if we make their build visible to you on the same screen, because that player could have done something to offend you. So you have to, like, so there's all of these like, this is horrible, like, intricacies of this system that have just come out as we've dived into a few of the details about it with the platforms. So that's the goal system.
Right.
Worst case scenario, we're going to get to a system that gives you a little bit more information than the Smite 1 system, and isn't as much, I have to go into every single god individually on my home PC and click, this is the build I want, and save it, right?
Every patch.
Every patch.
When the build changes,
It's such a time sink to be able to keep up with that. Whereas, like, if we could just surface better, like, here are good items, or here's what pros are building, or, something like that. I think that's the low scope version. So hard to say where we end up. We're kind of debating if it's worth the extra work to be able to get the good system everywhere. I'm pushing for it, but we'll see. Just given our other things that we're trying to get done, is it worth spending an extra, could be an extra month or extra 2 months on that system in order to deal with all of the restrictions around it being user-generated content with text and all of that. So, lots of difficulties, but we see the values in that kind of system.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you guys go about coming up with the +1s that gods get? It'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about the thought process.
Yeah, it's an iterative process. So generally, as designers, we get our god to focus on. We'll do a lot of in-depth research. We always want to make things lore accurate. We want to make things, more fun. We want to add playstyle differences. There are a lot of wants that we want. And then we'll share it with the rest of the team, get feedback from the team, and then we'll start implementing, and then we'll start playtesting. And it could, day one playtest of a god and their +1s could be completely different from day 20, So there is just a ton of iteration and a ton of feedback process. Every single day we playtest. Every single day we end up in meetings for an hour and a half giving feedback and iterating before the next day. So it is just a very long iterative process that I like to think always comes out with the best result, because I myself, I've made some stinker +1s that get cut pretty quickly.
Never, bro. Come on, you one-shot everything.
So yeah, we just try to make it fun. We try to also heed players' demands. If a player always wanted a certain thing from a god in Smite 1 that we could never do, we try to bring that to Smite 2. We attempt all of the favorite things, that's for sure. But there is an element of balance. There's an element of not making a god just insanely difficult to play or giving them an insane amount of variance, where if you're a newer player and you're only paying attention to the base parts of the kit, this god would be incredibly weak compared to if you're an experienced player and really read into a kit and use every part, it would be really OP, So there's just a ton of balance and a long iterative process to get a great result in the end.
I saw the question about the site of the Asia server. I made a note to talk to the server guys. I know nothing about that, but I will pass that along. There's a lot of people asking about aspects. Can you spoil, like, do you know what gods are getting aspects soon? Is there anything in development that's fun to, you don't have to say what it does, but
sure. I can say this morning we were playtesting. Well, our goal we have a set goal when we release new gods or ported gods. I should say only ported gods. We want them to come out with an aspect. That's the goal. That won't always happen. It just depends on how things work out during the god development. I can say I'm working on Achilles next. I'm also working on his aspect. As well, we just want to fit in as many aspects as soon as possible. We still have, I think we had 20 aspects in OV1, something like that, but 45 gods. So we have a backlog of aspects that we want to add to the game. There were 2 other gods being play tested today. I won't spoil them just because it was their first play test, and it may not even happen. Who knows? But it looked pretty good from me. But yeah, the goal is something like 4 aspects, a major patch. So the 2 new gods, plus maybe another 2 more. And then if there are some low scope, high impact ones that we can bring, we'll definitely do more. And we're working several patches ahead. So there's a ton in development. We've really, really enjoyed aspects. We're glad the community has as well. So we just want to get as many in that are good as possible. You know, there are some aspects that went out with OB1 that aren't seeing as much play. Like we saw the Anhur one, we're switching it up quite a bit in the patch notes we went over earlier. So we'll go back and address those. We are putting as much effort towards gods as possible, and aspects are tied to that. Will gods get more than one aspect? They could, in theory. We're building the system to be able to do that. There are just a lot of gods without aspects and a lot more gods coming. So we'd rather focus on those to make sure every god has some type of aspect before really double dipping on a certain god. But that doesn't mean there might be in the future a god without an aspect while a god has 2. If we have good ideas and we can implement them, then we want them in the game as soon as possible.
Cool. Killgoon, I see a couple people in YouTube chat asking about replays. Do we know if we have any updates on spectator and replays?
I don't think there are any big updates. You might probably know more than I do, actually.
Yeah, so I was working on spectator a lot leading up to Vegas. It's a difficult system, that's for sure. It is a really difficult system. I would say the groundwork is there. There's a lot more to do on top of that. We talked a lot about... we just have a ton of work for our UI team right now. SMITE is just a UI-heavy game. We're talking about God Builder and what we're going to do with that. It falls in that same list of priorities. Of course, we want it as soon as possible, but there are other priorities right now. We got it into a great spot for Vegas. I'm glad that went all well. You can still use them in customs. Anybody can jump into spectator. But a live replay and then a replay after the match is 2 different things. Live replay, considerably more difficult to do. Demo type replays where you replay after the match. We have something in place that is a work in progress still. Still going through bug testing that. No idea when it might release or in what form it might release, or if they might release together in the end, who knows. But actively working on it, yes. Can Nuwa become Old Wa with her aspect? She's a little bit of Old Wa. She's got some pretty strong basic attacks in there. If you remember Old Wa, she had very strong basic attacks.
And she had Ganesh's ults.
Yeah,
yes,
I don't know what we'll do with
bring back the shake and bake. You know, like
we'll just make them both at once. Her aspect. We just give her Ganesh her ult. Yeah. It's good to see people asking for Color Forge, but that is a massive system.
Yeah.
Of course,
we talked about Color Forge a while back in one of our Titan talks.
There's a question: what's more likely, a Mac port or a Switch 2 port? I would say a Mac port is very unlikely because we never had many people who chose to play on the Mac version of SMITE when that was a thing, and I don't believe that it's really grown in terms of like its game player audience. If you are on Mac, I believe you can still use the like NVIDIA GeForce Now streaming to play SMITE 2 if you want to. Yeah. So that option is out there. For Switch 2, we don't have a dev kit. We know as much as you guys do. Maybe someday, but it all comes down to like performance and also like the platform's rules and restrictions around how they run things, because Switch 1 had a lot of like developer side restrictions that made it incredibly difficult to run our kind of game on Switch. So I would say it's probably not too likely for either. But if you had to put a gun against my head and say which one's more likely, probably switch to, but I would say probably still not very likely.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people asking about what skins are coming. Let me see if I can find a little bit of a spoiler and see if I can clue people in on what we've got going on. If you all want to find a question while I do that.
Yeah, I believe we actually I see this question about the Spanish translation of aspect, and in Spanish, aspecto, I'm probably saying this wrong, is what a skin is called. I think that we gave aspects a different name in Spanish so that it wouldn't be confused, but I could understand how if you're reading like people talking in English about it, picking an aspect, the word's different. I think like we really liked the word aspect for every other language, so probably not going to change it, but I can understand that might be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, that kind of thing's just difficult to avoid. You know, we want to support as many languages as possible, and we have a lot of different terms and names for things in the game. It's almost impossible to avoid, but it is something we're aware of.
All right, I'm looking at the planned list for cross-gen skins coming to Smite 2 in the next update. Don't quote me by it. This could change. But I'm just gonna say one just because I've seen multiple people asking for it. Looks like Bunny Babe Nuwa will be in the next Smite 2 update, so people can look forward to that one.
There you go.
Yes, people are excited. Any plans on adding an auto run feature? I think we already have an auto run feature.
Yeah, it'll be, if it isn't bound, it'll be in your key binding somewhere.
I think you hold D-pad left on controller.
Yes, I believe that's the keybind on controller. Let's see here. All right, we're at 158, so let's do one more question. Dun, dun, dun. Each one of us take one more, and then we'll call it, because we've got the casters lying in wait for Casual Friday right after this show. So.
I'll take one. Are there plans to bring Humbats 3 AA cancel more in line with Smite 1? Yeah, I was looking at that yesterday. Already in a developer environment, it's a little bit better. It's not quite Smite 1, crisp yet, but we are working on it, and we are aware of it. I appreciate that everybody really enjoys those mechanics like I do. It feels great to get those double basic attacks, so we'll do what we can to bring it back so players can enjoy it again.
Has the team considered making multiple versions of the Conquest map or other maps to rotate through while still keeping the same shape? It's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work and very little benefit for it, I would say. The art is the hardest part of making a Conquest map or any map, right? So it would just be adding a lot of extra work for just another visual treatment, right? I think that if we're going to do a visual overhaul, it usually is going to be tied to some new gameplay
new map
feature. And then I guess I got to pick one too, don't I? WTF were we thinking with that Anhur aspect? We were thinking it sounds fun and we should try it, right?
Sometimes we think outside the box.
Like, Smite has always been a game where, like, yeah, it's a competitive game. We're going to balance things, right? But, like, crazy stuff happens in Smite. Like, Yorm goes flying through the air and, the extent of gameplay things that you can do in Smite always kind of try and push the boundary for what's fun or what's not fun.
Yeah,
right.
And if we go too far and it's not fun, then we turn it off very quickly, right? So, let us try things. Let us cook. It's not always going to be tasty, but sometimes we're going to come up with a great new recipe. So, so I'm excited to see, how you guys like it once you actually play with it. When this rolls out in the next few days, sometime, either over the weekend or early next week.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for our Friday edition of Titan Talk. We're going to cap off the week with a really great show.
Enjoy.
Again, be on the lookout for on our all of our social media pages, our Discords, the Steam news page, and stuff like that for news and updates on when all the balance that we talked about in today's show is going to be going live. We'll be sure to communicate all that out to you all just to make sure that you all have the most accurate info on what's actually happening on the battleground in Smite 2.
Yep.
Right after the show, the casters are going to be hanging out, playing some games for Casual Friday. So if you're interested in hanging out, sticking around, be sure to hang out for that. And until then, we will see you all on the battleground of the gods. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday at 1 p.m. ET for our next edition of Titan Talk. So,
See you
peace.
guys. Thank you.